And it is finally time, everyone. Welcome in to the first preview show of the 2024 season with the West Virginia Mountaineers hosting the number 8 Penn State Nittany Lions. Sorry that this show is a little bit later than usual. I would have usually recorded one of these kinds of videos if this was this time a year ago on Thursday to release first thing Friday morning to get you pumped up, ready to go for the game. But big news in my personal life, and I'll just be real quick on this so that I can move on into what you tune into this video. But if you saw my video just a couple of months ago where I announced that I will be being a girl Mountaineer dad, that today, a couple of days ago was the day. So Wednesday, August 28th, 4:30 in the afternoon, my little girl was born. My wife, superpowers. We just got home earlier today, so mind is a little frazzled, a little bit less asleep, so I'll do the best I can with this show as possible. Wanted to get on as soon as I possibly could before it was absolutely too late, because I wanted to bring this game to you. While I've been in the hospital these last couple of days, I've been watching everything across social media, of course seeing the unbelievable turnout today at the Life and Arts and Sciences building. For the Pat McAfee show, and what was just seriously a reunion of WVU football. So with Pat White, Owen Schmidt, and of course Pat McAfee leading the way. What an incredible atmosphere that it was already in Morgantown today. I hope everybody doesn't get affected by any weather that is coming through my town here in Washington, so just a little bit north of Morgantown. So hopefully the weather cooperate. We'll come back to talk about weather. But first and foremost, big weekend. Already had the McAfee show. Fox Big Noon kickoff is coming, is already set up, ready to go. So their entire show locked and loaded, firing tomorrow morning with Machine Gun Kelly, MGK, set to perform outside of Milan Puskar Stadium for the day. So I don't know if, I was at the Backyard Brawl last year, and the atmosphere was phenomenal. I mean, just the aerial drone pic of all of the parking lots just looked like blue and gold ants all over the place, filling into the stadium and out in the parking lots. But an atmosphere like this, I feel like it's hard to come by. For what the build-up to this game has been to this moment, best I can compare it to, I feel like, of my lifetime is 2011 against LSU. I mean, it was big last year for the Backyard Brawl, big for the Virginia Tech matchup in 2021. Big for the Oklahoma game in 2018. So it's been a while, especially the first time as part of the Neil Brown era. I know that West Virginia's been on Big Noon kickoff before, but this one just feels like a different atmosphere, y'all. Right now, Penn State being an 8.5-point favorite. The over-under on this game being 51.5. ESPN matchup predictor predicting this Penn State at 77.9. First and foremost, what I like to do as part of these preview videos is give you a bit of the history, give you a little bit about this matchup. We're going to talk about what this matchup means, a win for both teams, respectively. Going to talk about the weather, how that plays an impact in the game. Going to tell you what to look for when both teams have the ball. Penn State has the ball, West Virginia has the ball. And then, of course, give you my 3 keys to victory, as always, my prediction at the end. And then, we'll sign off, get ready to go. Under 16 hours now before game time kicks off at noon in Morgantown. Still kind of wish it was a night game, or at least a 3:30 game, but I know that the atmosphere is going to be incredible. So starting it off, as I mentioned this offseason, Penn State, unfortunately, has owned this series. In 60 previous matchups, the Nittany Lions have dominated 49-9-2 since the two teams first matched up in 1904, so 120 years. 6 of those 9 wins for West Virginia, though, have come at home. Most recently, of course, in 1988, when legendary quarterback Major Harris and company whipped up on the Nittany Lions, leading 34-8 at halftime and finishing with a 51-30 final score, securing WVU's 8th win en route to an 11-0 perfect regular season in which the Mountaineers played the number 1 Notre Dame Fighting Irish for the national championship in the Fiesta Bowl. Now in 2023, it was the resurrection of the rivalry, the first of a 2-game home-and-home non-conference series that had really laid dormant since the 1990s before West Virginia joined the Big East Conference, and Penn State, of course, joined the Big Ten. Penn State won pretty handedly, 38-15, in a game in which WVU, especially offensively, just wasn't ready for the moment in front of a reported 110,000 fans in College Park, Pennsylvania. The Nittany Lions really pulled away by 4 scores midway through the fourth quarter, and even though WVU countered back to cut the lead to 31-15, we know head coach James Franklin gave the okay to his second-string offense to pour salt in the wound. Bo Perbola scored with 6 seconds remaining to cover the spread and give the Nittany Lions the win, 38-15. I'm just noting that as a fact. I know that was talked about a lot by Eddie Vestorinen. Also, I think Garnet Hollis Jr. might have said something more along the lines of Penn State not respecting its opponents. I don't want to dwell on this fact. It really, at the end of the day, was not that big of a deal. I do not care about other teams, arrogance, disrespect, or running up the score, whatever you want to say. Again, West Virginia has dealt with this to varying degrees from Texas, Oklahoma, also with Pitt. I mean, it is what it is. It's at the end of the day, I just don't care. You got to win. Doesn't matter how you win, you just win. And then who cares? The history goes the spoilers. So Penn State covering that spread in that game of last year, 38-15. Now, Drew Aller was excellent in that contest at quarterback. His first start as QB1 for the Nittany Lions, going 21 of 29 for 325 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, highlighted by his 72-yard touchdown pass to Keandre Lambert-Smith on Penn State's first series, in which he stepped up in the pocket, threw on the run, hit Aubrey Burks, who played the ball, not the man, in Lambert-Smith, and he waltzed in for an easy score, electrifying the crowd early. Running backs Nick Singleton and Katron Allen were relatively kept in check at 121 yards rushing on 23 carries with a touchdown between the two backs. Now, 2 Sanders Sahaydak missed field goal attempts kept West Virginia in the game at 14-7 at halftime, if you recall. I really think it came down to 2 series in which WVU failed to capitalize on 4th and 7 at the Penn State 27. Neil Brown choosing to go for it instead of kick the field goal, being aggressive, down 21-7 with just 2 minutes and 54 seconds left to play in the third quarter, and this is when Penn State's offense was really starting to roll. Garrett Green and wide receiver Preston Fox just failed to connect on a shot play in the end zone. The other play, down 24-7, 10:56 in the fourth quarter at the Penn State 47. Nico Marchiol was sacked on a funky kind of trick play by linebacker Abdul Carter. Again, West Virginia just really wasn't ready to play in not necessarily prepared, but prepared mentally, confidence-wise. This was just a different type of matchup against a much better opponent than West Virginia faced in the backyard brawl of 2022 on the road at Acrisure Stadium. You can recall from the year prior. Bigger stadium, better team, raucous fans. And again, that was a standout defense. Fantastic that West Virginia, until it got more confidence, to, again, run the ball successfully. And they ran the ball pretty well, but more so Neil Brown giving the leash, more rope for Garrett Green to unleash his talents, to play. He was just kind of keeping him a little more contained, not wanting him to turn the ball over, playing it safe, and that just wasn't going to beat a Penn State team. That wasn't that kind of a game plan and execution that night was not going to beat that kind of a team that won 10 games. So enough about last year. Let's talk about this year. What's on the line for both teams? So for West Virginia, I think this would be the biggest non-conference win since West Virginia beat number 9 Oklahoma on the road in 1982. It could be the first win against a top 10 opponent since West Virginia beat Baylor, who was number 4 at the time, in 2014. West Virginia's only top 10 win as a member of the Big 12 Conference since that game. First top 10 win of the Neil Brown era, and just WVU's fourth win against a ranked opponent during his time as head coach. So I think this will vault West Virginia into the national top 25 rankings, which they were not ranked by the AP or the coaches poll to start out the season. I think this will secure a valuable non-conference resume data point for potential college football playoff consideration as anyone in the country to pick up this win, and add a feather in the cap to the Big 12 conference, beating a Big 10 conference opponent that is making over 3 times as much TV money this year because of their Fox contract. I think sticking it to a top 3 team in that league, Penn State's that good. I think it's really a dogfight between Ohio State and Oregon, but whether you think Michigan or Penn State who would win on a neutral field, Penn State's just as talented, if not better. So top 3-4 team in the Big Ten. Now for Penn State, it only has 2 teams ranked in the preseason poll on its schedules for the rest of the year: Ohio State and USC. Maybe Wisconsin or Washington will be better than advertised, but if Penn State falls to Ohio State November 2nd, as it so frequently has under head coach James Franklin, then it could use a win like West Virginia as a resume booster if Penn State's 11-1 or 10-2 and wants to make a case as an at-large college football playoff team that doesn't have a conference championship title next to its name. So just a resume booster for this Penn State team to get this win. They would never admit it. This is a game that if you ask, I feel like the majority of Penn State fans, they feel like they should win easily. And a good stat just mentioned, tweeted out a few hours ago by Brett McMurphy of Stadium, that Penn State, when it has a spread of more than a touchdown, so in this case 8 points, they've won their last 24 consecutive games. So this will be a daunting task for the Mountaineers to try and pull it out. I don't think the Mountaineers can blow out Penn State. I'll just say it that way. I think if anything, it's going to be a close matchup either way. At least more so than that matchup a year ago in Happy Valley, because this game is playing in Morgantown. Now, it's a huge recruiting weekend for the Mountaineers, has been reported by other outlets. But I would say also for supremacy in the region has been all Penn State for the last 3 cycles or even more. Coming up with this 2025 class of 2 guys that West Virginia had as visitors wanted: Braswell Thomas, a wide receiver, and Deshaun Burnett, a linebacker. Is there a potential from some guys who are local? I'm looking at like a Tamir Robinson from Woodland Hills, or some other Whippeal guys who don't live all that way from Morgantown. If they're not necessarily as happy with their playing time situation come the end of the season, you never know how these things work. It's such a weird the transfer portal and the recruiting through the transfer portal is such a weird element, but you never know. It can give credence to this argument that Neil Brown and staff have been trying to make since they started here in 2019, that they are changing the course for this program, that trying to pick up where it left off in 2018 when Dana Holgerson left for Houston, had Will Greer, had David Sills, had Gary Jennings, and so much talent on that West Virginia team, and trying to pick it back up. So this can be a shot in the arm for this program from a recruiting standpoint, because it has Penn State and it has Pitt in a couple of weeks. So what more of a statement can you make if you can beat the 2 premier programs in the state of Pennsylvania to those kinds of recruits? Okay, so let's talk more about the matchup itself, kind of give you everything surrounding it peripherally. So something I talked about when I did my prediction show, and why I think prediction shows don't really mean anything. Fun, and that's why they get clicks, and people tune in and want to have comments here and there, and everybody wants to hear your different predictions. But because of the different factors: injuries, one I want to talk about tomorrow, weather, and then of course what's going on with your program personally heading into the matchup. So where are their heads at coming into this matchup? So weather alert, biggest key to the factor I feel like impacting tomorrow's game. going to be a nice temperature, at least, high of 85, but an 80% chance of thunderstorms, which are saying scattered in the morning, becoming more widespread in the afternoon. How afternoon is afternoon? Is afternoon 12:01 or is afternoon 4:59? Because if it's in between the hours of noon and about 3:30, 4 o'clock, that's when it can make an impact in this game. So we don't really know. I feel like I was at the game last year against Texas Tech. Is it going to be that kind of an atmosphere environment? So wet that you really can't throw too many forward passes, especially when you're in close proximity with the defender. You're just trying to run the ball. So that's what I'm very curious to see, is the impact of weather on this game, and maybe not so much as rain. More so the lightning thunder factor. What was it, the home opener in 2011? First game of the Dana Holgerson era, West Virginia played Marshall in its home opener. We can recall that one. I think the game was called into the fourth quarter because of such long weather delays. We had a thunderstorm delay in the Duquesne matchup a year ago. So how does that impact the psyche of the players, even for Penn State? I mean, sitting in the visitor locker rooms versus your home locker rooms, if it's an elongated period of time, do guys potentially cramp up? You never know about these things. But also the impact of the game, I feel like weather knocks down the potential for big days offensively. If it was a controlled environment in sort of a dome, different story. But whenever it's rainy out there, harder to pass for everybody. So something to watch for. So when let's talk about who to watch for when Penn State has the ball. So talking about the Penn State offense versus the West Virginia defense, I think the storyline for this game is a new Andy Kotelnicki-led offensive system. We can infamously remember Andy Kotelnicki from his days at Kansas just a couple of seasons ago when a Jalen Daniels-led offense proceeded to score 42 points in regulation on West Virginia's defense in the start of the 2022 season. That was game 2 after the backyard brawl. Ultimately, West Virginia falling in overtime because of a pick 6 thrown by JT Daniels. In this matchup a year ago, Penn State passed the ball 30 times to 35 rushing attempts. So while I can foresee this kind of balance again, statistically, I actually think both teams are going to want to use the run to set up the pass, go ground, try to assert their will, win the line of scrimmage, but take some design shot plays and improvise downfield passes, as in the case with Aller's big touchdown pass to Keandre Lambert-Smith to start the scoring for Penn State a year ago. So speaking of Aller, last year, 233 completions on 389 attempts, so just a tick below a 60% completion percentage for 2,631 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So very efficient in his first year as starter in Happy Valley. We saw the best of Drew Aller in that matchup against West Virginia, unfortunately, for the entire season a year ago, when he passed again for 325 and 3 touchdowns. But he's been really, it's someone who, I don't like Penn State and, of course, all of the different West Virginia rivals, but as someone who's a college football fan, objectively and analytically, I feel like he's been very unfairly picked and prodded by the national media all off season and has been the poster child by those who don't have Penn State in the same tier 1 in the Big Ten as Oregon and Ohio State. And for some, he is the actual reason why they're giving West Virginia a chance in this game. Like my guys on the Crane & Co. show on Daily Wire. They do not like Drew Aller, and a lot of national media just saying he could only throw checkdowns, only throw short routes. I didn't see that in that matchup a year ago, so maybe I'm wrong. Was not good against Ohio State, was not good against Michigan, 2 biggest matchups. A little too not enough too late in the Sugar Bowl matchup or Peach Bowl matchup against Ole Miss last season. So here's what I'll say. I think Aller did exactly what he was asked to do a year ago. Don't turn the ball over. Take what the defense gives you. Run the ball and let Penn State's defense dominate in 8 contests, give or take, last year. that they held opponents 20 points or fewer. So with the addition of Kotelnicki, he's obviously going to be asked to do more. And I think today will be a great, or tomorrow at least, will be a great indication of whether he's already ahead of schedule, or will fans not know until week 5 when they open Big Ten play against Illinois, or week 7 against USC, or beyond. But of what I saw of him in this matchup last year, he was the offensive reason why Penn State won and had that second quarter where they really took charge and never looked back. Will we see Bo Pribula in some different packages? I think obviously in short yardage situations, wanting to use his legs, wanting to use him in different run plays, scored that touchdown at the very end of the fourth quarter. Some Penn State fans would like to see Bo Pribula already getting the nod at that starting quarterback. So I think we will see him there for a few plays, mainly because of his legs. Talking about the running backs, number 10, Nick Singleton, number 13, Katron Allen. Looking at both of their totals from a year ago, 171 carries for 752 yards and 8 touchdowns, 26 catches for 308 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was Nick Singleton, who did drop in a yards per carry from 22 to 23, 6.8 to 4.4. So a down year, quote unquote, with those numbers. A little bit better of a year than last year, than 2022 for Allen. 172 carries for 902 yards, 6 touchdowns, 14 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. So they're a two-headed monster in the same way that West Virginia likes to use C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White. Similar-ish running backs. I think both have the ability to be a power or speed back. Maybe Singleton has the edge there on Allen from a speed perspective, but both talented running backs. And they got a 5-star in Quentin Martin, a local kid from Belle Vernon, not very far from where Rodney Gallagher grew up at Laurel Highlands, also coming in as a true freshman. Doubt we'll see him getting any carries at running back with those two guys in front of him, but maybe perhaps we'll get involved in special teams. Tight end, very interesting. Tyler Warren, one of the best tight ends in the country. Matchup problem at 6'6", 260. Last year, just 34 carries, 422 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And why I say just is because he was doing so behind Theo Johnson, who was a 4th-round draft pick to the New York Giants in the 2024 draft. So he did all of that as a second stringer. Imagine what he's going to do now as a first stringer for them. He's talented. He's big. He's going to be a matchup problem. We'll see how, Tyron Bradley, perhaps Aubrey Burks, Josiah Trotter, some of those linebackers and safeties, can they match up with him and get him down on some, arrow routes, out routes, curl routes, however he's used involved, maybe perhaps off play action, in the similar way that West Virginia uses Cole Taylor. Watch for Tyler Urban, number 44 in this matchup. It sounds like Khalil Dinkins, injured earlier this week, may not play in this contest, but also big-bodied, 6'4", 255-pound tight end. And even when I mention him, the redshirt junior at 16, that's his number. Penn State ran out of 2 tight end sets 51% of the time in 2023. So you would expect 44 on one side, 16 on the other side, and getting those guys both involved. Maybe it's Andrew Rapoli, 5-star tight end that Penn State got out of this past year's recruiting class, one of the best tight ends in the country, if he gets involved. But true freshman in his first game on the road, maybe not, or they just go with Warren. So wide receiver, this is going to be interesting. We think we know who number 1 is. Number 3, Julian Fleming, the redshirt senior from the state of Pennsylvania, former number 1 player in the state of Pennsylvania in the 2020 high school recruiting class. He was the number 14 overall player in the country and the country's top wide receiver recruit. Out of Southern Columbia High School, I'm sure if he had to do his career all over again, instead of going to Ohio State, he would have stayed home and went to Penn State. hasn't been involved all that much, but because of the pedigree that he comes from out of high school, he was the biggest portal addition for the Nittany Lions offensively in the offseason. So 26 catches for just 270 yards last year in 12 games. Ohio State was, with its quarterback, quote-unquote, issues last year, but Emeka Egbuka in front of him, Marvin Harrison Jr., Fleming, Kyle McCord, was such a down quarterback for Ohio State. I couldn't believe it, but Fleming was kind of an afterthought in that offense. So coming to Penn State to be their number one now that Keandre Lambert-Smith is off to Auburn, who's their number two? That's what I think everyone, including Penn State fans, are wondering. You're kind of like a three-way tie between Harrison Wallace, number 6, Caden Saunders, number 7, and Liam Clifford, Sean Clifford's little brother, number 2, wide receiver. The player who got the most out of it last year was Harrison Wallace. 6 starts and 8 appearances, 19 catches for 228 yards and a touchdown. Saunders was involved as the team's punt returner a year ago, but just 6 catches for him on the year. And Clifford, 1 start, but was involved in 13 games, just 13 catches for 130 yards. So don't know what we're going to get out of the wide receiving core from Penn State. So with West Virginia trying to figure out this relatively brand new secondary where they're replacing 3 starters, 1 at safety and 2 corners in the defensive backfield. This is kind of like helpful, I would say. It's not like you're going up against Rashad Owens and Brennan Presley at Oklahoma State to start it off. So looking at the Penn State line, solid. Whereas I think West Virginia's strong side is its left side. The right side will be for the Nittany Lions. I'm looking at right guard, 6th-year senior Sal Wormley, who's a Big Ten, 2-time Big Ten honorable mention there at right guard, and also at right tackle, redshirt junior Nolan Rucci, former 5-star high school prospect who chose Wisconsin out of high school in part because his brother played tight end there, but was an in-state Pennsylvania kid whose parents both were star athletes at Penn State. Only saw action in 3 games last year. So what I have to say about Penn State's offense against West Virginia's defense, I think because of the weather factor, could get ugly in this matchup, which could play into West Virginia's hands of just having to cover short fields, force Aller to beat West Virginia over the top, throwing into the rain to receivers he may not have yet to develop a great rapport with, led by an offensive coordinator that he hasn't played a game with. So things, if you kind of connect some dots, there should be proverbially some opportunity for West Virginia to not get, really blown out with Penn State just rolling offensively like it did in this matchup a year ago. So I think this is good. I feel good about Garnett Hollis Jr. being cornerback 1. Hearing that from Jim Nagy of the Reese's Senior Bowl that he was already going to be at least a 5th-round draft pick in the 2024 class. So coming back, so feeling good at least until I see him play in replacing Beanie Bishop, that cornerback 1. Have to see what we get out of Aiden Garnes at cornerback 2. Sounds like Jacoby Spells, hearing Neil Brown's show on Thursday night, may be healthy enough to play in this matchup. You have TJ Crandall, Dantes Fagan to possibly rotate in there at cornerback 2 as Penn State tries to figure out who's its second wide receiver. So I don't really, though, feel great about the safeties behind Aubrey Burks. It sounds like reportedly Anthony Wilson got hurt in training camp, so we may be seeing more of Jaheim Joseph at free safety, but you might see Wilson getting in there at the start and seeing how he goes. But at cat safety with Kakura Tarnu or Josh Jackson, I've just been nervous at that position since the first depth chart announcement at Big 12 Media Day. So I'd watch to see if Kotelnicki and Aller pick on either number 14 in Tarnu or number 22 in Jackson, depending upon who gets the start at that position. Why you don't try out going to a true 3-4 scheme and having Burks at 1 safety, having Wilson at another safety with 2 corners, beyond me, but that's why I'm not defensive coordinator Jordan Leslie. So big time moment, I feel like, for this defensive line to prove a statement here. And Sean Martin, Fatorma Mulba, who's a former Penn State player who came to this team before last season through the transfer portal, so he knows these guys, a lot of these guys at least. This is his moment. This is a big game from Fatorma Mulba, who West Virginia let Mike Lockhart walk to SMU Insert Mulba there at that nose tackle position. Can he get a push up front? Eddie Vesterinen, who had a lot to say about how he was so upset and ready to go to play against these guys. And then TJ Jackson, West Virginia's best, quote-unquote transfer portal addition defensively this past offseason from Troy. How will he rotate in on the defensive line? And then at linebacker, you have Josiah Trotter and Trey Lathan, both coming back from injury. What kind of an effort will West Virginia give stopping the run in this contest, especially if it's a wet one and it's like that Texas Tech game? It's just going to be a ground and pound, and you're kind of running up tempo. I know there's only 65 offensive plays last year by Penn State, but these games go fast with this accelerated clock. I know there's a 2-minute warning now, which is new, and exciting if you've been playing EA Sports college football or been watching some of these games over the course of the last week. But I think the run-stopping effort is going to be great. I think because of the crowd getting involved, very important, that this effort will be good. How worried am I about the length of a 12-game regular season and beyond? Ask me in a couple of weeks. But at least for game one, I'm feeling pretty confident. So when West Virginia has the ball, let's talk about that. Garrett Green, we know kind of the starting lineup. Expect that. Garrett Green at quarterback. Jaheim White, C.J. Donaldson will rotate it at running back. Know the line across the front, the one position that we kind of talked about during the offseason. We might have seen some sort of a competition was right tackle between sixth-year senior Nick Malone or Xavier Bosley, redshirt sophomore, transfer from Jacksonville State. That was one of West Virginia's, I think, only offensive line transfer portal player that it got this offseason. So to battle there with Nick Malone, we'll see how that goes throughout the season. But for now, as I expected, Neil Brown going with a trusted veteran in Malone, who did see some time last year for Doug Nestor, who was nicked up for a few games. We know our tight ends. Pass-catching tight end being Cole Taylor. Run blocking one being Traylon Davis. And then at wide receiver, we're going to see how these 6-7 wide receivers fill in. How does Jaden Bray, how does Justin Robinson, how does Day Farmer get involved? Does Rodney Gallagher, Traylon Ray see more reps? Is this Hudson Clement's first string wide receiver? Is he locked and loaded, ready to go? Again, depending upon the weather, I think this is going to be a run-heavy offense like we saw a lot of last year in this matchup because of the weather factor, not wanting to turn the ball over to this Penn State defense, which has playmakers at all three levels. The more I study about Penn State's defense, even after the losses of Adisa Isaac and Chop Robinson, bam, they don't rebuild, they just reload with Abdul Carter at right defensive end and Denai Dennis Sutton at left defensive end. So the opportunity for West Virginia to run the ball, I feel like, is going to be between the guards and the centers, and you're replacing Zach Frazier with Brandon Yates, a sixth-year senior. So all eyes are going to be on how number 50 gets a push up front, and no quarterback-center exchange issues. Fingers crossed. The thing is, with Penn State's defense, is you're going up against Kobe King in the middle, number 41 linebacker. Awesome player. 59 tackles a year ago, 6 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Returning the one returner there, and the linebacking core, because on one side you'll have Dom DeLuca, and also on the other side Tony Rojas, who will be making their first career starts. Both highly productive in rotational roles for the Nittany Lions last year, Rojas being a national top 100 recruit out of the 23 class. DeLuca, a former walk-on who really did have a PWO offer from WVU. So you got King in the middle, you got Carter and Dennis Sutton on the other sides. So it's kind of there across the guards where there may be some opportunity to run. But again, how creatively Neil Brown designs this offense and this play calling, this is his moment. This is his LSU when he was at Troy, or Troy going up against Nebraska. This is one of his biggest signature moments as a coach at West Virginia. How can he, with this upperclassman-laden offense, what's the right play calls at the right times, the right rotations at the backs, don't get anybody hurt, and dependent upon the weather, how do you attack this Penn State defense? You've had 6 months to do it, really, since the end of the Duke Duke's Mayo Bowl against North Carolina, you knew who your game one opponent was going to be. So this whole staff has had all off season to find ways of how they can attack this secondary in a talented secondary unit. Number one, KJ Winston, their junior safety. Number two, gonna probably be a first-round draft pick. He's the captain on the defense. So big-time player. Jalen Reed also to his side. Zakie Wheatley being the nickelback, kind of use him in various ways. Very, very fast. And then at corners, two new guys, and Cam Miller and A.J. Harris. I just think you're going to have to take some shots. You're going to have to be creative again in how you get involved. Some of these downfield threats in Bray, in Ray, in Clement, in Robinson up against these corners. I don't know how much the slot guys are going to get involved, as part of this game, just because there's so many talented playmakers across the front seven. I think you're going to have to take some shots downfield, just like the way 2023 went. So, and you saw West Virginia did have some success. I can think back to the one play that's shown in most of the highlights when talking about this matchup from a year ago, and how Devin Carter kind of broke the seam downfield. If Green was able to throw a little bit more, put a little bit more oomph into the throw, might have had Carter streaking down the field for a touchdown. But again, going to be very much weather dependent. So I'm watching those matchups. You got Winston in the secondary. You got King in the middle. You got Dennis Sutton and Carter at the defensive lines. Those are some of the playmakers. But as I talked in the offseason, Penn State, when you look at this roster, how many 4- and 5-star high school recruits that are on this Penn State roster, 45 prior to a couple of dismissals that Penn State just had a few weeks ago. So maybe like 43 to West Virginia's 6. So there is a talent discrepancy depth. The ones, I think West Virginia can make this a game. But over the course of time, the involvement of the twos, that's where it's going to show the difference in degree of talent that Penn State has against West Virginia. So it's going to take a valiant effort, going to take great coaching, just like Brent Key did for Georgia Tech last week against Florida State, and you're going to have some things go their way. West Virginia's way is the way I analyze this. Creative play calling, ride the crowd. If West Virginia is able to force some turnovers and short fields, capitalize, I think number one, I don't want to give away my 3 keys to victory. Hold on. So let's talk about special teams, looking at the different kickers. So not going to see Xander Zahidek, I don't think so. After he missed those 2 kicks in the West Virginia game a year ago, he was replaced by Alex Felkins, who went on to be second team All Big Ten. Penn State brought in junior Chase Meyer from Tulsa, who went 17 of 20 with a 47-yard long field goal for the year. He was also 30 for 31 on point afters, touchdowns. So extra points. For West Virginia, we know who it is. Redshirt senior Michael Hayes, 17 of 21 with a 49-yard long a year ago. Made all of his 46 extra points a year ago. So like that matchup, and I think Hayes can have the edge in that kicking game, especially kicking at home. Punter's going to see an awesome one. For Penn State, 6th-year senior Riley Thompson from Melbourne, Australia. Big Ten honorable mention and on the Ray Guy Award watch list in 2023. Averaged 45.8 yards per punt on 50 punts with a long of 56. Had 15 punts for over 50 yards, 17 inside the 20 with just 2 touchbacks. And, of course, for the Mountaineers, another Australian down under, junior Ollie Straw. Finished the season as a Big 12 honorable mention. Averaged 43 yards per punt on 42 punts with a long of 61. Had 8 for 50-plus yards and 19 inside the 20 with just 2 touchbacks. So very evenly matched there if this becomes a defensively frustrated game at points in times or the weather being a factor. Ollie Straw, as we saw in a couple of matchups, can actually pinpoint where he wants to hit the punt on the returners. So West Virginia, like we saw in Oklahoma State, like we saw in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, may have some opportunities to capitalize on a turnover because Ollie Straw is such a good, coffin corner locator punter. So like that. I think the returners will be very interesting for Penn State. We're either going to get Nick Singleton and/or Quentin Martin on the kick returns, and Caden Saunders at punt returns. So Penn State trying to figure that out. I think we saw in the Big 12 Media Day guide, I think we'll expect to see Preston Fox at the punt returner, Hudson Clement eventually going to be one of the kick returners. Really would like to see Jaheim White and Rodney Gallagher be involved, perhaps even Day Farmer, who apparently has had an amazing fall camp and could get involved early on special teams. Be very curious to see how that's affected if you've been playing college football. On EA Sports, Day Farmer and I think even Keyshawn Robinson are two of West Virginia's fastest guys to use at the kickoff return positions. So very curious to see where they go there, and I really want to see Rodney Gallagher and Jaheim White get involved there. So let's talk about the 3 keys to victory. Almost kind of gave it away there. I'm going to give you 2 offensively. 2 offensively. Yes, it's that important. Number 1, finishing drives. West Virginia scoring touchdowns over field goals when it gets into the red zone precipitously increases West Virginia's chances of winning. Limiting self-inflicted wounds. This is kind of 1A of 1B under the heading of finishing drives. Like I said, the Yates to Green center quarterback exchange, no fumbles, missed blocks, passer to receiver rapport, just looking polished. Again, the weather can make this, organically not look as polished because of the conditions, but when you have as much returning talent who has experience, look the part. West Virginia did not look the part last year in Happy Valley. That's going to be the difference, is when West Virginia gets its chances to capitalize. And apparently that was something of great importance in fall camp. That was one of the number 1 things that West Virginia as an offense worked on, is being more successful in red zone offensive opportunities. So capitalize on that. Good teams do that. That's the way to win. Number 2, I think start fast, play to win. If I'm coming up with a title for these things. As we've talked about many times in this offseason, that 2023 season can be looked at in 2 halves. The first half being the Penn State game up into the second half of the Houston game, and then the Houston game all the way through the Duke's Mayo Bowl. When you saw West Virginia and head coach Neil Brown really uncage the tiger that is Garrett Green, let him use his talent, let him use his abilities. Do not coach so conservatively, Neil Brown. Let him go out there, improvise, and make plays. Now, Garrett Green's got to be smart, very smart. Can't take his helmet off when he has a Hail Mary touchdown to Hudson Clement to give Houston the opportunity to come back and win the game on a Hail Mary. Can't do things like that. Got to be protective of his body when he takes off and runs. He's a warrior. I've said this a million times. But it's a long season, and Garrett Green's is arguably as important as any player on this Mountaineer team. So not putting himself in poor situations and not doing what he really didn't do much of last year, and that was turn the ball over. Kept the ball protected when he was running the ball for no fumbles. 4 interceptions he had for the entire season a year ago? So not, the kind of raw, just let it rip passer that he was at that end of the 2022 season, like we saw in matchups against Kansas State and also Oklahoma State on the road. So look for your playmakers to make explosive plays in space, and that I feel like is going to be the difference also. How often is Jaheim White going to break something? How often is Hudson Clement going to break something? Cole Taylor, can he just be the monster in the short yardage gain, but also jump over some people if the ball's thrown downfield? Successful improvised plays may be the only way that West Virginia can score explosively against this Penn State defense. It's not because I don't believe in this offensive line to give Garrett Green enough time to drop back, go through his progressions, find the open man, work that potentially short to intermediate game that most of us pundits have talked about all off season. But I'm just saying, ones where maybe if you're doing the scramble drill, you're rolling out right, you're rolling out left, looking for your life. Penn State's fast. You can't do that very often. But if you happen to do so, that's college football. That's college. If you watched that Colorado and North Dakota State last night, improvised plays where you're just trying to make something look athletic can sometimes be the difference. And that's what I think that West Virginia is going to have to do to be able to take on such a talented team as Penn State, is get lucky in a way when plays break down because of Green's ability to scramble. Last point, feed off this crowd defensively like Virginia Tech in 2021. The crowd willed the Mountaineers to victory that day when Jared Deggy wanted to give the game away in the end of the fourth quarter. So this defense is going to go against some playmakers. Again, stout line, great running backs, really good tight end, quarterback who might be the difference in a win or a loss for Penn State, and a wide receiving core that's probably going to get better as the season progresses. This might be, I don't want to say they're worse. That's not necessarily what I mean to say, but like the chemistry development with Aller is going to take a little bit more time. So they'll get better as the season goes along. So this is a good time, I feel like, to play Penn State, especially at home, and especially if it's a rainy environment and can kind of neutralize their passing attack. Also can affect West Virginia conversely that way. I might be overrating this fact about the weather, but if you watched the Texas Tech game last year, and so many other of the matchups that West Virginia had good weather, that can be the difference, I feel like. So can this defense, or this crowd, who should be 60,000, full throat, ready to go, even though it's a nooner, if it was an 8 p.m. kick, totally different, but still going to be, West Virginia's best effort, with the most expensive ticket price across all of the week one games. So it's going to be loud. It's going to be proud. Can you bring it for fourth quarters? Can as I talked about with the Game Day Experience series, can whoever's running the music cue up the right songs, the right videos, the right, it's almost like memes or just those short clips like, I can't hear you, or, pain, like all those different things that we've traditionally seen over the last 20 years at Mountaineer Field. Can West Virginia fans bring it all game long, especially when Penn State's on the field? Even though, there's a difference between 110,000 at Beaver Stadium and 60,000 at Milan Puskar Stadium, can you show that you are a top 25 nationally worthy, toughest place to play? That's what I want to see. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it in person tomorrow, just with the responsibilities of this new baby. But for everybody who's going to be there at Milan Puskar Stadium, I hope you have an awesome time and it comes out with a victory. Now, for my prediction. If you watched my prediction show just a few weeks ago, I went through game by game, came away with a 9-3 overall record for this Mountaineer team that just doesn't make the Big 12 Conference Championship game. When this game kicks off, my heart will overtake my head and say, let's go Mountaineers, let's win this game. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling good. Let's do this. And then for 3.5 to 4 hours, I'm going to be on the edge of my seat, stressing myself out. That's why I can't do post-game review videos like I do on Sundays, because I need like an entire, day to cool off and go, do a reaction show more analytically, more thoughtfully on Sundays. I'm pretty much spent as a fan on Saturdays. So, with my head over my heart, I picked the Nittany Lions. And I said 38-31. Because of the weather impact, I think this game could be lower scoring. I watched that backyard brawl game in 2022, and I think West Virginia can give the same kind of effort that it did in this game as it did in that game. And, again, the 2022 Pitt team versus this 2024 Penn State team, not an apples-to-apples comparison. But that's the kind of game that I can see playing out here, where it's a bit of a defensive scrum in the first quarter, playing field position. Things start to break open into the second quarter, very close at halftime, and then the third quarter is just a shootout, going back and forth. Because, and again, we'll have to see how the offense or the weather plays itself out. Who gets rain whenever, what a team has the ball at the point in time when rain comes through. Will there be a thunder lightning delay? Who knows? So this could be a crazy one. This could be a really, really crazy one at the end of the day. Penn State has only given up 20 or more points in a game to opponents not named Ohio State or Michigan over the last 2 seasons 3 times. Indiana, Rose Bowl against Utah, Purdue's season opener in 2022 on the road. So this would be not historic, but I would say beyond the norm for Penn State to give up 31 points. So that might be, if you're a Penn State fan, like my good friend across the street, Dominic, who tunes into all of these videos. If you're watching, thanks for tuning in, Dom. That this might be a little bit high scoring for Penn State fans to kind of digest. But I think we're going to see it. I think that's the kind of day it's going to be for the Mountaineers, who are playing on all adrenaline, full NOS, and full throttle. So pedal to the metal. We'll see how West Virginia gets it done against the Nittany Lions. I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping West Virginia comes away with a victory. Love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Keys to the game for 3 keys for victory. Breaking down offense, defense of both teams in this game, the matchup, how you feeling about it. Let me know in the comments here on YouTube. Love to have you a subscriber as we go out this 2024 season. I'm going to bring you a video on Sunday to kind of talk about it after the fact. So the recap videos, try and drop a preview video Thursday night into Friday, and then we'll come back on Sunday and we'll recap it. So going to be a lot of fun from Milan Puskar Stadium. If you're going to this game, have a blast. Have a wonderful time out there. Stay safe. Let's go Mountaineers, and hail West Virginia. I'll talk to you on Sunday.